On today's show, our review of the SimFix SR-1 sim rig.
Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm Sean Cole with my good buddy
Darren Ganji.
And we're here for today for a DIY, well, kind of a DIY rig.
Kind of a half DIY.
Half DIY. Many of you out there might have seen our Deathmobile, which was a true DIY rig. And I think this was heavily influenced by that rig, or you'll see some similarities, that's for sure.
Design sure looks that way.
But this is actually a kit that you can buy with all the pieces pre-cut, and it's rather inexpensive to get.
Yeah, and shortly after we started doing our DIYs, I got an email from a guy named Matthew Norcross. Basically, he's gone out and purchased all the wood. So what we talked about, actually, one of our DIYs was the guy gives you all the plans, Rick Motec, and then you have to go out and get all the wood and cut it. And then our DIY was scrap wood that we had under Sean's car. But this guy's basically taken our idea and kind of packaged it. He gives you all the wood and hardware to put this, it's called the SR-1, but I'm gonna call it Deathmobile 2, DM2, to put it together. Without the seat.
So basically any junkyard seat or from Summit or Jegs, any seat will do.
Quick disclaimer though, looks like he built this for one of those Jegs bucket seats that really don't have much cushion. So I think that directly relates to, you know, your seat height to your wheel deck height.
So on this one, you're looking at 60 bucks for the SR-1 kit. You're looking at $40 in shipping, and in our case, about a $50 seat. So we're looking at a $150 rig here.
Yeah, internationally, I don't think he's gonna be able to ship to you. So this is just for in the US. And you know, like Sean said, you're gonna need some kind of seat. If you're on a budget, cheaper is better, obviously. So the tools you're gonna need for this project are, first of all, you're gonna need a drill. That really puts it more into the DIY, do-it-yourself category versus just a buy and run rig. You're gonna need either a socket wrench.
7/16, ½ inch, and 9/16. A tape measure is gonna come in handy. Need a screwdriver or a screwdriver tip for the drill.
This was made for a guy more of Sean's height. Matthew said he's got a Sean Cole version and a Darren Ganji version of this. He's not calling him that, but he's got one for the shorter guy and the taller guy. So we've got the shorter guy one, and so this rig really is useless to me, so I'm out here. No, seriously, no, it's, I can see where it could easily be adjusted to fit me, but, so this was built for you, and you put it together. Let's talk about the assembly, Sean.
Yeah, it came in a rather awkward large box, a little different than most sim rig boxes, in fact. But when I emptied it out and looking at all the lumber there, I actually kind of thought to myself, that's it? This is a sim rig? But started putting the 2x4s together to put the square base together. Started taking the 2x6s and building the upright, sort of a U shape. That all went together pretty easily. Then it was just a matter of laying down my pedals, judging where I was going to mount my seat. So now I had my seat, and I had the cross beams that were going to be for the seat. So I kind of test fitted it, got it to the right distance for me, because I was building this for me, and then I could start setting where I wanted that U shape for the upright. Once that was in place.
So now this isn't pre-drilled for the upright.
No, and that's where it kind of gets a little weird on the DIY versus ready to go.
So if he was to pre-drill that base, would that have made it completely ready to go, except for finish?
Yes, but he would need a bunch of holes, because there could be a big difference between where you'd put this on because this is the thing, this is really a custom rig, and that's where it's not a purchasable rig. You are gonna put things where you want it, or in my case, where I want it, and that makes it different from anything else that you can buy. So if he did a bunch of holes to make it truly that quality, it would look like Swiss cheese on that bottom beam. Plus, he needs another 2 for the cross support. There are a few snags. You know, lumber's interesting. It's not always perfectly straight. So my box on the bottom, I got a little bit of a pivot to it, but it was square. And then when I did the cross beam, you can see it's a little off. Now, structurally, it's perfect. It's just that it's not lining up perfect. And either something's bent down there or something's just...
Something's off.
Something's off slightly. And that's gonna happen, I suppose, when you're working with a kit like this. It did go together pretty easily, and even when I got it to the point here, I was still thinking to myself, that's it? I mean, even compared to the Deathmobile, it seemed a little simple in structure. But then when I sat down, it was very, very firm, and I was quite impressed.
The original build, or the original instructions of build, didn't have one post going this way and one going this way. Why did you opt for this setup?
Well, basically, I started with the pedals and worked everything outward from that. My pedal deck was a little too far forward, so I didn't have enough length to mount this forward. So I mounted it this way, and I liked the way it looked, so I was fine with that as far as aesthetics go. The other thing for me is I tend to pull on the wheel more than push. Then I cut the other one short and made it so it goes the direction it's supposed to, so I could still get in on the other side like I like to. Wouldn't be compromised with them both going backward. I don't know if aesthetically it looks cool with them going opposite.
So you needed a saw.
I did. I had a saw too.
So...
But I could have mounted the other one the other way.
Well, but wait a second. So if you would have mounted it with the parts that he gave you, this wheel deck would be that way. This would push the whole thing.
Yes.
Because it would be turned around.
Yes, absolutely. And
Okay.
I would have had to move my seat back further that way, and that would have forced me into more of a recline to be able to reach my pedals, actually.
So I mean, if let's say you bought this rig and were stuck in that, in that situation, you could just go to a Home Depot and they'll cut it for you.
Yeah.
That pretty much wraps up what we got here, the build, and I think that's going to take us to some pros and cons. Rev scale, we're going to rev scale it too, right?
Sure.
And when we come back, all that I just told you.
Peggy 3.
What makes a driver a champion? Determination, speed, courage. There are many drivers with these qualities, but they're not always enough to make a champion. A champion needs something more. When you push yourself to the limits, there is only one thing that can really make the difference: control. This is your challenge. This is WRC3.
Welcome back to our review of the SimFix SR-1. Again, we have it here. It's $100. Darren Ganji here with Sean Cole, and we're going to tell you the pros and cons. Put it on the rev scale, just like we would any other rig review. We're going to consider this a purchasable rig. First thing we're going to start off with is the cons. And the first con, definitely rough around the edges. We mentioned that in some other reviews that we've done. Really no finish at all to this. You know, some of the wood that he's purchased is not the highest quality, but then again, you're buying stuff at Home Depot, your local lumber, it's hard to get really high quality without actually doing some finish work to it.
And it's real basic lumber with being 2x6s and 2x4s. Now another con is something very obvious. You have no height adjustment of the wheel deck. Another problem is you have no angle of the wheel deck. So depending on what you like there, that could be a little consideration as well.
Another con is this thing's ugly. I mean, this thing is not racy at all. Next con, you can do this on your own. Matter of fact, we've got the plans to the Deathmobile in our forums, and you could basically take those plans, take them to Home Depot, have them cut the wood, get the hardware, and you'd have to still do some DIY work. You can just go to the next level and do it yourself. So.
Another con is there is no actual mounting for the pedals. So Matthew on his design put a sheet of plywood underneath that you could mount to. That would also give you the ability to maybe add some rake if you wanted rake, but right now the way it sits, it just kind of leans up against that last 2x4, which functionally works, but I mean, it'd be nice to mount my pedals to my DIY rig.
And the final con, no shifter mount. You know, so if you have a G27 or G25, there's no place to put it. I guess you could put it right here.
And if I had the piece of wood I cut off that one, I'd mount it right there.
Yeah,
Piece of cake. Give me 5 minutes off a shifter on it.
So that's going to wrap up the cons, and that's going to take us to the pros. So
first pro for me, like any DIY, this is close enough to DIY that it's personalized to me. Darren came over and couldn't even fit in my rig, which I don't care. It's built for me. No offense, but I mean, I built it for me and I want it to fit me like a glove, and it does.
Next pro is that it's stable. You know, this type of design with the wood, and especially with the way Sean had changed the direction of this one, super stable. I mean, you're not gonna get a wheel deck that's more stable than this one.
Another pro is it's made of wood. I love building in wood because you're never finished when it comes to wood. You can change the color, you can change the design, you can add to it. That's great.
Yep, next one, you can mount any wheel or pedal to it. Well, you can mount any wheel to it. There's no place to mount the pedals, but again, you could figure something out if you wanted to add some rake or whatever.
Another pro is inexpensive. So we're at $150 the way this one sits, finished the way it is, and that is about as cheap as you can do a rig.
Last couple, comfortable, and you can pick your own seat. Pretty cool. You know, I gotta hand it to Matthew for going for this route. Nobody else has done it yet. If you're interested in getting one, you know, we're gonna have the link in our description. Before we do, why don't we put it on the rev scale?
Rev scale, I think you and I are gonna have to judge this slightly differently. Ultimately for me, I'm gonna give this an 8. And the reason I give it an 8 is, well, you look at the pros cons list, it's all right there for you. For me, it worked out pretty well though, so I think that scores maybe a little higher than you would go.
Well, give me the Darren Ganji version, the taller guy version, and it would probably suit me a little bit better. I don't know if it deserves an 8. A little rough, too rough for me, a little too much DIY. Very affordable though, so I'd say between a 7 and an 8.
I'll move into my final thoughts on this. I mean, for me, I love construction. I love building stuff. I love DIY. What I saw here was a great starting point. So for those who are a little afraid to go with our DIY plans, which left something to the imagination, I think it gives you a nice head start. That when it meets the core of stability and the core of comfort, you've got me on the right path.
I'd say it's worth $100 as a base. Again, you're gonna need to do some more work. You know, how was mounting the seat, by the way? We didn't really talk about that.
That was really easy. I mean, seats basically come down to 4 points on the bottom. You have 2 cross rails that give you the ability to move it farther forward or backward, or make them as close together or narrow as they need. So it was gonna adapt to any seat that I've ever had through here on our DIY projects.
Would you recommend it?
Again, for somebody who wants a DIY but kind of lacks that vision to do it for themselves, which is part of DIY, it's a good starting point.
Well, that's going to wrap up our review of the SimFix SR-1 sent to us by Matthew Norcross. Again, Matthew, thank you for sending us this rig. We really appreciate it. And it was probably best you sent it to Sean because Sean is the builder, Sean the Builder Cole. He forgot his overalls in this one. So yeah, thank you again, Matthew. If you're interested in purchasing one of these, we have the link to eBay. If you're interested in looking at the rigs that we did, our DIY rigs, go to our website, InsideSimRacing.tv. Check out the sim rig section at our forums too if you want those DIY plans that we did.
That's where you're also going to see what people have done to our Deathmobile, to the Ricmotech, to the PVC, and taken them to a whole different level, that customization of a DIY rig.
So that's going to wrap it up. For Sean Cole, I'm Darren Ganji. We'll see you guys next time.